And I'd like to transition to CU. CU, would you like to kind of describe your project that you're working on? And let's see if we can get some feedback, because this has been one of the most important things that we've heard of, requirement coming out of our customer base with regards to PDBs in the past, well, since the inception of PDBs. So, CU, you there? You want to share?
Yes. Yes.
All yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, John. I will take over from here to talk about our new feature, which is a refreshable PDB switchover that will be available in 18C release. I will give a very brief introduction here because for your HA environment, we believe it is a very deep talk that probably we will give a separate discussion in the future. So here I will just generally give you a sense of what we can do, what we can provide you in our HA environment. And I believe most of you already have a sense of how to do data protection in Oracle Database environment. And you will be pretty familiar with DataGuard Broker. DataGuard Broker has been designed in the old days to deal with two database data protection. But now we move into a day that we have multiple separate database that is container-based. So how to deal with data protection in multiple PDB environment is the question that we will address in our next release. DataGuard is used for CDB level data protection, which means when you have any problem happened in even just in this case PDB1, you have to reverse the whole PDB. But your PDB2, PDB3 is healthy. Maybe you just want to deal with PDB1. DataGuard cannot give you PDB level granularity, cannot give you this level data protection. So here we have a new feature, refreshable PDB switchover, that provide you more capability or more flexibility in case of PDB environment. So here you can see we have two servers. One contains CDB1, the other one contains database CDB2. And as you see, I can create a refreshable PDB from CDB1 instead of CDB2. Use this very easy clause, SQL clause. This is like a refreshable clone from CDB1. And each time when you hit the refresh mode, in this case, it's every 2 minutes, the CDB2 will get the redo transportation from CDB1 and recover at this site so that they can kind of in sync. And probably you want to create multiple PDB here. You have a golden in CDB2, and you want a brown in CDB1, and you have a gray in CDB2 again. And you can create another refreshable clone from CDB1. You have the clone of CDB2. You can see here we have different direction. So this means in this case, the primary PDB is instead of server 1. And in the gray PDB case, you have the primary instead of CDB2. So you can see we gave you more flexibility in PDB control. Then let's move. This is like how we can create a replica of the primary PDB. Then how to manage the switchover, how to manage the PDB in concept of failover, failback. We can move to here. You can just use a very simple clause, which is switchover, to make this role transformation from standby to primary. It's very easy to perform, and it's much easier to set up compared to DataGuard. As you can see, for DataGuard, I have no idea whether you have the experience of setting up DataGuard. It takes a very long time, and the process is very complicated. But here, when you want to create a replica, you don't need to do all this complicated implementation. What you need to do is to create a refreshable clone, and then you will have a replica. You don't need to do a separate process to make this happen. And when you want to perform the switchover, the clause is also very easy. However, I would say, even though this capability is very amazing, it doesn't mean it is a replacement of current DataGuard, because DataGuard can provide you the synchronous replication, which gives you 0 data loss. But our capability, our current refreshable PDB switchover, still involves a certain downtime here. So when you perform the switchover, it involves a little bit data loss, a little bit downtime here. So it is not like a 100% synchronized replication. But still, depends on your workload, depends on your use case. This probably would be a better choice for your environment. And DataGuard has its own better use case.
Yeah, if I could just jump in real quick. What she's describing is purposefully called switchover. This is not a DR solution. This is a PDB switchover where you have provisioned a refreshable clone pair that you can use, where in the example that I described, you may have an application that relocates to a different data center or a different location, a different subnet or something to that nature, and you want, for performance purposes, to co-locate the database with it. Well, in this case, it's a very simple DDL statement to do the switchover from one environment to the other. There is no data loss, though there is a brownout while this switchover catches up, because it is an asynchronous event. The switchover completes as of a specific SCN. So it is not a DR solution, but clearly I think at this point you guys can understand that we have a very strategic direction to deploy a DR, PDB level DR solution for standbys, PDB level standby. But it's not there yet. This is just a stepping stone in that direction. Pete,
yeah.
Questions. Question, is the refresh done using archive log? And Chan answered that. Yes, we do block level data transfer, just very similar to, in fact, it is the same DataGuard code. But we don't do the level of block checking that DataGuard does, at least not yet. So we ship the redo logs. We can read the archive logs if they're available to us, and in addition to the data files. Okay, so mining happens at destination. Total redo stream is sent. Yes, that's correct. And any other questions? I did, Steve wanted me to describe, I don't know that he's with us, but Steve wanted me to describe a specific use case in development. And the one that I'd like to describe is one that we've presented with Swiss Mobiliar. I don't know if you guys, hold on, let me share my screen for a moment. So Swiss Mobiliar had the requirement to provision a backend database in their entire DevOps workflow, where they're using Docker registries at the Dockers at the application tier, and a continuous integration development lifecycle for their application. In this case, they were migrating from legacy monolithic apps to microservices. So they were looking for an agile, fully functional enterprise-class database on the back end. And they looked at different solutions, but ultimately they settled on pluggable databases. And this describes a workflow that they implemented, which is REST-enabled as well, but solely for the provisioning of a pluggable database. It doesn't include the entire life cycle management. But you get some sense of the time it takes to provision a database, but not just the database itself. This 8 to 10 minutes is for the entire application and the pluggable database. What's not described here is the security lockdown profiles that are implemented, as well as the encryption that's configured automatically via the REST call to provision the pluggable database. So we are very agile, and we use very similar mechanisms in our own cloud in terms of development for multi-tenant, for agile cloud provisioning. So are there any specific questions that you guys might have with regards to what you're doing, where you're headed, where we're headed, or anything that we can make your life a little easier in terms of multi-tenant? And I don't think, are you guys on mute? I don't think you're on mute. And who's the last man standing?
So we have a question actually, John.
Okay.
On the chat, I was actually typing, but we can take it live right now too.
Sure.
So Adrian asked, when working with CDBs, the all-in-one is good for DBA and sysadmin, but for developers and security teams, this can be a drawback. How are we managing these operations when we have multi-tenants and they want to have their metadata isolated? So each pluggable database has its own table space and data files, and they're totally isolated from each other in terms of where we store these data files and who can access these data files. So in terms of, for instance, backup, you can back up at the PDB level, and you can again restore at the PDB level. You don't have to back up all CDB at once, so you still have that granularity. Maybe you can be more specific which operations that you're referring to that you think we can perform at the PDB level.
Yeah, sure. Basically, we have had several questions from partners and customers, specifically when they want to, for instance, make a debugging and check the trace and log files. And when you go to check them, you see the CDB level. You see all the information from all PDBs. Or you had this one of 12.1. I don't know if it's changed on 12.2, but basically that was the focus of the question.
Well, I might be able to address some of that. So you see in 12.2 total isolation in terms of metadata with respect to operational performance. So you can take AWR snapshots and generate reports at the container database level as a privileged user for all hosted tenants, but you can subdelegate responsibility down to a PDB admin, which could snapshot and report on PDB specific, whereas they only see the metadata, the performance metadata associated with their PDB and system stats, but nothing related to any other PDB. And the same is true for trace files. Let's just say that I implement a 10046 or some other system or session level tracing, and I want to take a look at it. Well, most customers are increasingly limiting their client access to the operating system, so they're not giving privilege to actually read a .trc file. But we expose all of that through formatted views, so you can query your trace file via SQL and get a formatted and filtered version of the trace file, and that would include the alert.log, where you see only tag data relevant to your pluggable database. Same is true for buffer cache or shared pool or any of the caches for that matter, where you can your privilege only extends to the context of your pluggable database. Simple example is that a pluggable database is associated with a con ID. And that con ID essentially defines what you can look at in these caches. So you would only be able to select, if you wanted to look at the buffer cache or the shared pool, you would only see those buffers that are associated with your con ID. So we are deploying this. In fact, the pluggable database is the only database that you can deploy in our cloud. And whether you're co-located within your own line of business or co-located with other customers through a partner, we guarantee this level of isolation. For SGA, not comfortable with saying only my part in SGA, too much interaction and possibly contention possible. We have to see how this evolves. Fundamentally, I think the only thing you're concerned about as an end user is performance. Obviously, availability, but I tend to think of those hand in hand. As performance degrades, availability generally is affected. So, again, as part of the autonomous, we know what, based on observable patterns in SQL execution for a particular query, we know what the expected performance should be. And we know what knobs internally to tweak to satisfy that performance. And that might be adjusting the optimizer plan, or it might be throwing more CPU at it, depending on what's running on the system. But you should not, you as an individual user should not be concerned about what's in the SGA. All you're concerned about is your performance. As a database or a pluggable database administrator, yes, then you want to see holistically how the system is performing. And in that case, you are extended greater privilege and would be able to see these things because you are not considered just an ordinary end user. Make sense? But hey, I agree with you. Let's see how it evolves.
Just a quick note on SGA as well. So in 12.2, we actually introduced 2 new parameters at the PDB levels, such as you can define SGA min and SGA target for PDB, so that they don't get like any performance problems due to other PDBs running away with all the resources.
So we've covered some roadmap. We've covered what we've done in our own cloud in terms of REST enablement, lifecycle management, implementing lockdown profiles. We've described performance profiles in terms of CPU and, as John just mentioned, SGA PGA settings, min and max and target values configurable in the context of the PDB. And we've also described what we considered somewhat of an Achilles heel in terms of PDB availability in certain use cases for PDB switchover. And so you covered that very eloquently, I thought. So if there are any other questions or anything specific to, again, your use case, what could we be doing that you think that we're not doing? What would you like to see enhanced? Or this is your opportunity to assist in the direction of the product. Judith, I didn't see you. What are you doing here? Holy smoke. I just saw your name. Go ahead, ask a question, Judith. Alberto. Oh my gosh, Alberto. Hey. Why don't you go ahead and ask a question, man? Frank, surely you have a question.
Come on, guys, don't be shy. I'm also writing down our OTM page link on the chat section. So we are actively updating it with the latest collateral. So you can also keep an eye on it as well.
So I'm going to share this real quick, and then I think I've got a Yeah, so one of the focus areas in terms of automation has been minimizing the number of parameters that you need to tweak to satisfy performance SLAs. And obviously to optimize for PDB provisioning and efficient placement across a fleet of container databases. So you will see, and in fact, there's a Moss note that's recently been published where we will derive dependent parameters off of a defined CPU count in the context of PDB. And what that basically means is that for a given service, you can define a factoring algorithm or tweak a factoring algorithm that basically allows you to define the CPU count and a factor that influences what the PGA, SGA, parallel execution and session settings would be in the context of PDB. There's a Moss note. I think I've got it. Hold on one sec. I can pop up here. No, that is not it. 1 second before we close. Yeah, okay. Let me stop and share the Moss note. That, oops, can you still see that Moss note? So basically describes this, and you'll see more and more work going in this area in terms of the efficiencies and simplicity of database configuration. So I'd suggest note the doc ID, take a look at it. We'd like feedback on it, and I know some of you out there are excellent bloggers, and I value from your blogs as positive and negative feedback in the effort that we're doing in development. So please review this, and I want to make you aware of this because this is a strategic direction we're headed in terms of simplifying database provisioning and configuration. So we've got 4 minutes left. Like to open up the floor for any last minute questions or comments, positive, negative, or neutral. There's the Moss note. Anything on chat, Chan? I've got to juggle all these.
No, there's nothing I can see.
Okay. Well, with that, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to discuss these things with you. Please reach out in terms of things you would like to see or have us focus on with regards to multi-tenant. And I would ask you to tune in on the application containers. I described how we're implementing application containers in our own SaaS applications. And I referenced use cases for some of our early adopters. And Patrick has an excellent presentation on application containers. And for those of you that may be at Collaborate, I think in April, he will be presenting on application containers there. And again, apologies for the last minute bait and switch. Patrick fell ill this morning, and we just stepped up for a quick Q&A and share roadmap with you guys. I hope you found it useful. Is there any other? There's another chat. Trace files, got it. SGA, not comfortable. Okay. Well, with that, thank you very much.